Oh,
We're,
yeah. And it was a few seconds away.
yeah, welcome to the Real Raw. I'm Lynn Serrano,
And I'm Brian.
and we're here for another interesting topic. So we'll be right back after this. Welcome back, boy. I'm not a last minute person, Brian. But boy, was I was like at the last minute, I finally put our topic on for today, and I just went ahead and did the banner like right through that 17-second intro.
We're
So,
we're doing
so,
role reversal here.
yeah, I felt like I was riding on the rails there. Two
Now
wheels,
you know
not
how I
four.
feel.
Oh my goodness, yeah, you're you're good at it. You got so many projects, and you're like right on point. Brian's always working right up to the time we get on the show, so he doesn't show up like 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm like, "When's he gonna get here?" But the element of surprise is always great.
If I show up 10 minutes before, I'm having a bad day.
You're like, "Did I forget to do something?" Because it's
Yeah,
a.
I could have worked 8 more minutes on something else and then show up 2 minutes before. Yeah, because I
But
got to have that natural panic from Lynn in order for it to be a
yeah,
great show.
and it's going on 3 years. We're heading into our third year, and so it's like sometimes it gets me, sometimes it doesn't anymore.
Yeah, it's like, is she
So
going to show up? We got 3 years in. He'll be here.
he's always on time when it cues. So hi Brian. We missed last week. We had a
Yeah,
replay of what your word was for the year. So we had some
good
responses
show.
on that. So
Oh,
thanks
good
for
show.
watching that. I liked it too. So today, this topic that we got it from a website, 15 things you should give up to be happy. Purpose from purposefairy.com if anybody wants to go check out that website.
Yeah.
And so we're going to just hit on some topics today. So Brian, why don't you go ahead?
So how do we want to do this? Do we just want to call out like one at a time and then give a little description of why we chose it, or how do we want to do this?
Yeah, sure. Go for
Okay.
it.
So there's a lot of them here that I mean it's a lifelong journey. It's not like, hey, I'm gonna master that tomorrow. None happen. Right?
No.
It's a lifelong journey. All of these are, and in no particular order. The first one that I chose, and there was a lot of tough ones here because I mean excuses, blame, our brain is, we can condition it all we want, but there's going to be things that are going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one that really spoke to me was self-talk, giving up your self-defeating self-talk for whatever reason. And it's a daily journey for that, putting the personal demons aside. You can or you can't, doing the work that's necessary to get, and there's no agreement for any of this. That really speaks to me because it's a daily commitment to try to stay on that path of not being rattled by I can do that or I can't, or whatever my internal dialogue is going with at that time. But the self-talk, you and a lot of it can be based on the things that we have control of. All of it, as a matter of fact, how we sleep, our diet, our exercise, and that doesn't even consider if you have some kind of mental or physical condition.
Yeah.
So, and it's what we tell ourselves on a regular basis. And there's been many documented pioneers and educators and high achievers that have spoke about this, over the years. So that one really speaks to me.
Well, that self-talk, I've had to go ahead and dissect it to the move the needle little by little every
Yeah.
day.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think you've had that epiphany on the show where, you were like, no, I got to get this project done, blah, blah, blah. But you realize that even though it's okay to say it's not all done, but it's in progress, because
Yeah.
I'm telling you, when you start publishing, it's like, holy shit, Batman, you're going to be publishing like mad,
Yeah.
and it's not lost or anything. It's just a process. And so many people have done that. I mean, like you've heard many authors say, it's a life work project, in the making. It just doesn't happen overnight.
Correct.
And so the self-talk of, being an athlete and being this and that, and, it's just, it's when you get older, the things change, and I mean, it just happens for everyone. But when you realize that you just have to be careful of how you talk about yourself and what you
Yeah.
do, because it just you're crippling yourself by your words when you do that. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's what you tell yourself every day and the meaning that you give to it.
right,
It you're telling, you're having this conversation on a daily basis with yourself, but the more that it's repeated, it's one thing to have it be repeated. It's another thing if you start making that your reality
right.
instead of hearing it and shooing it away and just saying, I hear you, but I set that aside and I move towards where I need to be.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a great reminder. But again, just remember, just do a little bit if you can't do a lot, because
Correct.
eventually it'll all be done.
Right.
And that's giving yourself grace, especially in that self talk.
Well, and
So,
plus, everything that we want to do in life is up to us. And we always have, if we're not firm in our own skin,
yeah,
there's going to be nobody that's going to take a stand more than we are for
right,
ourselves.
right. So, yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that one up.
How about
So, what's the next?
your turn? What's your
Oh,
first one?
well, I'm like you said, giving up the self talk. You always think you've got that beat, but then you don't. It creeps up. And then whether you're going to feed that animal or not is really where you have to stop. You have to take that 5 seconds to say stop. It's not what's That's not going to help. That's not going to help. It's just going to perpetuate, and you're going to go down that rabbit hole and ruin your day. So that self talk is something that you need to talk to yourself like you're your best friend,
Right.
you know. And
Well,
when you do that, then
and it's like anybody
it's
that is up
better.
to big things, along with the big breakthroughs and the big successes, are going to be the big breakdowns.
Yeah.
But what does every achiever do? They pick themselves back up and they come back stronger, more tenacious, more relentless, and uh, more assertive. I'm not going to say aggressive. I will say assertive though, because
Yeah.
the distinction there is that they still know they still know how to do it, but they're not going to be harsh to the external world, to somebody else. They're going to know
Right.
their P's and Q's about how they should proceed, but at the same time maintaining respect for everybody that they encounter.
And yeah, hi
Hi,
Tim.
Tim.
Thanks for being here. And the biggest thing about that self-talk is that you got to realize that some of that self-talk comes is because your opinions, or you're more into what everybody else is going to think,
Right.
and
Right.
you're like, no, I got to do this for outer view. No, the inner view will eventually ripple out to the outer.
Right.
And I think that when people realize that you're going at your own pace, but you're finally getting to the race. There's marathons. Some people will walk a marathon. It
Yep.
doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yep.
really mean that you have to run the marathon. You
Sure.
can run, walk, whatever. But it's a matter of when you get there, or what your intentions are going along the way there.
Well, and if you're going to please the external world, good luck with that one.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because you're
you'll
not
never.
gonna you might think it's a great idea, but don't look for agreement.
No, there's just too
Not
much
gonna happen.
diversity and too much stuff going outside that is none of our business, really.
Correct. If it makes
So,
sense to us and it's what our heart is really telling us, go for it. Is it
right.
gonna be easy? No, heck no, because
Yeah.
everybody'd be doing it. But if it's able to move the needle, and I'd be also willing to say is that anybody that is willing to get up by their bootstraps every day, is that their life is not about them. They realize
Yeah.
that their life is more of a calling for something else that they want to create.
Which I think we could jump right to the luxury of criticism. Like,
Sure.
the criticism of all that. We worry more of what the Joneses have or what they're doing, that it really takes so much momentum away from what you're doing, even if
Uh-huh.
you're doing it in micro pieces.
Well, and just like planning a great wedding or writing a book or whatever, which you have more expertise than I do, it's like, hey, if the end goal is what you want it to be by creating a great wedding or finishing your book, what makes a difference about if you follow the proper format of what somebody said?
Yeah,
Like, who
exactly.
cares?
Exactly, and that's really what I did with putting myself out there writing that book really fast. I was worried about, but what about this and what about that and what about, and it was a blessing because the editor I had, she's like, Lynn, I didn't see your messages and I didn't realize your deadline. And I was like, well, it wasn't meant for you to be part of it. It's
Right.
meant, and I was like, if Grant Cardone could put a book out there, first one, and be all misspelt and everything, I can do the same thing, you
Right.
know? So I mean, but you've got to find your own purpose and your own perspective, not the luxury of what criticism or what people are going to say about what
Right.
you did.
Well, and I remember some priceful information, and I always got to give credit where credit's due to Scott McCain. Right. I remember talking to Scott about books and all of that, and he said, Brian, you're never going to be able to control how somebody perceives what you wrote. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
And and then he asked me a follow-up question. How many people will it take for, to look at your book or to read it, that you helped, whether you realize it or not? How many people will it take to know that you made a difference in their life? And I'm like, one person, one couple, one bride, one groom, one parent, one maid of honor, one best man, whoever's involved in that process. If I could save one wedding from being, very average and cookie cutter versus something completely personalized, that's worth all of the work over and over again. Plus it's a legacy piece,
Well,
you know.
yeah, and look at all the people that have passed away that their books did not become number one
Right.
until decades of being gone on this earth.
Right.
So I
Well,
mean,
and I mean, there's never going to be any agreement. It's like for every person that writes a book, there's a lot of other people that say that they can do it, and they're willing to condemn those that do. But they more than likely have the same opportunities, regardless of how much money you have or any of that. Everybody's got stuff going on, but the people that wanted to make a book a part of their life and create one, they did it.
right.
And it doesn't matter if you have $1 million or $500 to your name or $200 to your name. If you want to do it, you're going to find a way of doing it. If you
Oh,
see the value in it, you're going to do the necessary steps to create it. And
yeah.
that goes
I
for
mean,
anything in life.
absolutely. What was it? April 15th, tax day. I mean, I was like, hey, I'm going to publish this book and I'm going to make sure I have it ready for my trip. I did it in 3 weeks, but I did it too because I was like, if I'm taking a trip, I can write it off. I mean, whatever. But I mean, again, it's whatever you make it to be. Don't worry about what the naysayers say, because a lot of naysayers will say things before somebody's successful, and then they change their tune when they become successful.
And I think one thing that I became very firm in my skin of, and maybe it's shown up after 3 years of doing the show, is that I have a point of view and I'm perfectly comfortable with what it is, regardless if you agree with it. I don't really care.
Yeah,
Because what I've realized is that it's my own unique perspective, but also, though, I'm not asking for it to be something that you agree with.
right.
But it's going to keep showing up from a standpoint of I'm going to keep putting it out there. But the big distinction there is I'm not badgering you or creating some kind of conflict or friction.
Oh no.
If you don't harmonize with it or understand the root of it, because it's all based on a foundation that's all part of it, I'm not asking for approval. I'm
No.
not asking if you like it. I'm still going to keep putting it out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think when you give up all that you need some approval or you need, it to get liked 1,000 times or whatever, it totally defeats the purpose of getting your voice out there and doing it consistently.
Yeah. You just reminded me that it's good to mention that we put attachment to everything,
Oh yeah.
and we need to let go of the attachment to, the criticisms of others. If you want to read criticism just to make yourself better, do it. But to attach it to be like this is golden by someone, some keyboard warrior, you're screwed, buddy. Because there's plenty of those out there, and it just, yeah, you can do without that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
now the last one that we really have is the limiting belief.
yeah.
And that's something that we always forget, that, you may have been one of the kids that said, don't touch it, or been told, don't touch the stove because it's hot. Or you may have been the kid that said, okay, well, I'll give you a good example. My mom, she used to make tea and she'd put it in a glass mug. She'd always put a spoon in it. Like, why did you have a spoon and why are you drinking it hot with a spoon in it? And she explained it to me, but I didn't listen.
Mhm.
I had to try my own experiment, put hot water in a glass, and it shattered everywhere. Whereas if you have that metal spoon in there, it will not shatter.
Yeah.
But
The,
again, you have to test those things for yourself, as opposed to, and experience some things as opposed to just be told.
yeah. The self-limiting beliefs, I still feel like I have them, right? It's a
We all
daily process, just like self-talk, but it's the more you put yourself in a space of giving up that, you got it all figured out, it's going to be perfect, right and wrong, any of that kind of conversation, and you just do it in a humble way, you start blazing a trail that you don't even really keep track of. Like what I started to do when I had people make me realize all the work that I created with writing. I just write. I don't really. Now I'm a little bit more aware of it, but that's not the point. The point is that I want something to be there for people that can help them and make a difference. But at the same time, if I was concerned about how does it going to look, do they understand it, that's a work in progress. How I take something very complex and make it into something that's very simple is not an easy thing to do when you don't think simple. You know,
Yeah.
you want to create simple, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's kind of like coffee, right? You got to ground it up, you got to put it in there, and then it trickles out in the bottom of your cup. Well, doesn't necessarily mean that what's up here trickles down into what's out there in the world that people are going to connect and understand, or if they want to, for that matter, which I can't control. But I think that our self-limiting beliefs are it's married, in my opinion, to self-talk. What we
Yeah.
tell ourselves over and over again, our subconscious. But the more
We,
we, and I'm a firm believer in this, is, and this is from an improv, standpoint, is that commit to living a life that's uncomfortable. Live your life in as many uncomfortable ways as possible, because then you don't know, you become, over time, you become immune to it. That you don't know if you're comfortable or uncomfortable just because you're always doing new things. And kudos to one of my mentors and good friends, Bill, who's been in the performing arts for 40 years. He goes, either be on stage or in a class at all times. That's coming from a performance standpoint. Either be on stage or in a class at all times. You
yeah.
don't have time to think about ooh, am I going to hold back, or do I have a chance of not being embarrassed here? It doesn't matter. You move past it. If you're in a theatrical realm or in some kind of improv show or class, the more you push yourself to be uncomfortable, the more you're going to do, and the more you're not going to know your identity after a while in a good way.
Yeah. And I just thought of, be your own myth buster.
Hmm.
There's that
Right.
show. I mean, they showed you a lot of things that we thought were a certain way, and they're like, let's bust that myth. So if you can just go ahead and take your limiting beliefs and say, well, why do you think that, or why is that so?
Right.
Or where did it come from? You just got to dig deep, and digging deep for everything you say and do is really, really important for your own self sanity.
Right. Well,
You
and
know.
if we look at like wedding traditions, for instance, there's a tradition and then there's interpretations, right? The traditions are timeless. Whether or not they're used anymore, or if they cycle through, or what's old is forever new type of thing, they're there for a reason, is because they're timeless. But the distinction is that there's no meaning attached to them. Like garter removal, for instance. That's just one example that a lot of people do not want to do anymore because of the interpretation. It's
Yeah.
not because of the way that it was presented, for instance. And what I commonly find is that people hold on to the interpretation that wasn't done well
Right.
and it was alarming or inappropriate, versus the tradition, which it's timeless.
Well, and
So
that's
go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that's a limiting belief that people
Correct.
believe that your wedding has to be that traditional. We got to do everything that it's been done over and over. So you gotta break and realize that you do not, other than die and pay taxes, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
Correct.
And if you want to be a trendsetter, you know, do something out of the ordinary to be, original.
Yeah.
Don't be, be OG. Don't be don't be just like everybody else, you
No,
know?
be a work in progress.
Yeah.
You know, as Harvey McKay said something about you're going to be your biggest project or improvement project, you know, for your life. And I'm a firm believer in that. But again, it's a choice. You don't
Right.
have to do any of this, but if you want to, it's a daily commitment. And if you do it, you're probably going to surpass the people that over time you'll surpass the people that might have different views or they want to keep you in a bubble instead
Yeah.
of removing all that from your life.
And it's true, you know, as a mom, you get to taking care of kids and you're worried about their needs and you don't forget about yours. And sometimes I wish that you know, young mothers or mothers would learn that if they worked on this, especially when they were raising their own kids, because you know, anything you do, your kids see and emulate.
Hmm.
You know, when we're younger, we don't care about our development as much as we do later in life and
Right.
what your legacy is. So any final words on these? Because I thought it was a great topic today.
Yeah. I would say if you're ever in a situation where you need to justify yourself, if you need to do anything other than be yourself and just, you know, move at your own pace and do what you're doing, if people question you more than they respect what you're up to, or really reach for your heart or really understand what's in your heart, maybe it's not the right people to be around. If there is more drama, if there's more friction, if there's more misunderstanding, than it's worth and what your time allows, get rid of it, remove it. And it might not be easy, but it's definitely not paving a way for you to have some positive energy and for you to just do what you do. And it's people understand why you're on that track.
Right. And again, Brian, it's always good to talk to you because you know it's just you know human people sharing human experiences here, and to provoke you to think on your own, you know, your own 2 feet, whatever you want about the topic. And so I love it. I love spending this time with you,
Likewise.
and I think it's a wrap. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I think it was a good show. I think we're going to continue this next week with a couple
Yes.
more of these
Yeah.
items, right? We'll talk
Yeah.
just like we did here.
And it was, if you want to know more, go to purposefairy.com and read the article yourself. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks, everyone. See you next
Yep.
week.
Love you, Brian.
Love you too, Lynn.
Bye.